Members of the Council, members of the public, please be upstanding for the Worshipful, the Mayor of Gedling.
Seated. Okay, good evening everybody. I hope you're all well tonight. Unfortunately, I don't think we've got my chaplain, Father Philip, with us this evening. He may well have been called away. So I'll proceed with the agenda. Okay. Item 1, that was thought for the day, so we move on from that. Item 2, apologies. Can I ask the relevant members to confirm if we have any apologies, please, starting with Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, please. Apologies from Councillor Graham Pope, Councillor Viv McCrossan, Councillor Marge Palin, and also Councillors Michael Payne and Michelle Welsh, who are away on parliamentary business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sam Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Lorraine Brown, Councillor Jane Walker and Councillor Martin Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
All present and correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. And are there any other apologies at all? No? Okay, thank you very much. They are noted. Item 3, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from anybody? No? Okay, thank you. Move on to the next item. Next item is the main item this evening. Item 4, to consider and if approved, adopt the recommendation of the Cabinet dated the 13th of February 2025 and set the council tax for the year ending the 31st of March 2026. We now move to the budget items 4A to 4D and include the council tax resolution circulated to you all as one yesterday. The recommendations for approval were circulated via email yesterday. Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Hollingsworth to second, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that. Do you want me to move it before I read the statement?
Yeah, do you want to move it? Yeah.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor. Reserve the right to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, we'll go through the Budget Council leaders' notes. This is for 2025-26. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to set out this year's budget first in the context of the national picture and then move on to Gedling's position before finishing with the performance of Labour administration over the last 14 years. And I hope this meeting goes a little better than last week. We don't have a Reform candidate or a Reform councillor jumping up and down and doing somersaults on his chair, which was quite amusing for us that are county councillors. But yeah, I've been there a long while, as you know, but I've never seen anything quite like that. So we've got that, and hopefully we'll be more respectful than we saw Mr. Trump with Mr. Zelensky the other day. So anyway, I'll carry on now. In recent years, this country has been a period of change, the likes of which has not been seen for many years. Firstly, coronavirus changed all our lives, and I think, you know, those unfortunate people who lost relatives, etc., and we'll be remembering those. I think it's this Sunday, isn't it, by the memorial stone. Secondly, we are still suffering from the cost of a living crisis with a period of high inflation, increased food and petrol prices, higher mortgage rates and squeezed household incomes. Thirdly, we are living in a world where the raging wars continue to have a major impact on our national economy. And I think also the mental health of people, because all the time, even as Sam and I were in a meeting this afternoon, I just looked at my phone and it said China's quite happy with the war over trade war, this war, or any other war. And I thought, what, where are we going? Which is, again, very difficult to deal with. We can't deal with it at Gedling, but we can make an opinion. Mr. Mayor, addressing those issues is not easy, and the Conservatives left the new Labour government with a lot to do, including a multi-billion-pound gap in its finances. And that, hopefully, will be the last time I have to say that, because we had this, what was it, Fire Authority the other day. And you can point this out, but you have to stop. That was history. We're moving on now. So let's get started now. Latest economic data showed that January 25 recorded a surplus of 15.4 billion in the national economy, and this is the highest surplus recorded for the month of January for over 30 years since the records began. Despite this positive news, it fell short of the 20 billion anticipated by the Chancellor in her budget, meaning difficult financial decisions still lie ahead for all of us. Further changes are also happening at national level with the publication of the English Devolution White Paper in December 2024. And I think Sam will say the same. We've seemed to be in and out of meetings continually with all sorts of different people trying to come to some solution on that. This will create a new single-tier authorities across the whole of England, meaning the 9 existing councils across Nottinghamshire, including the city, will all be merged. Sadly means that Gedling Borough Council will cease to exist in around 3 years' time. And I think you've got to look at this, and I did say it in the meeting today, you've got to look at it. There are opportunities. This is 2 new councils, and not particularly a city-county battle, but there are 2 new unitaries that are coming. So we have to be quite positive about it. Now let's turn to the business in hand. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to start with some details about the budget funding. This year's budget continues to be set against a backdrop of historic cuts to government grant funding and declining income levels since 2010-2011. Not only that, but we have rising inflation, rising demand, placing Gedling Borough Council and many other public bodies under the incredible pressure. It was hoped that a new Labour government would bring recognition to the financial struggles that councils such as Gedling have faced over this last decade. However, with the state of the nation's finances left by the previous, I was hoping not to keep mentioning that, left by the previous Conservative government, then this has not been possible. And once again, we have received a 1-year financial settlement. I hope that changes. There's lots of lobbying. There was lots of lobbying on the previous government. 1 year is not good enough. We really do need a longer term to try and get your budgets in shape. One measure the government have always used is a cumulative core spending power. Gedling now stands at a decrease in funding since 2015-2016 of 0.62%, making us the 5th worst affected council in England, having always been in the top 7 of worst affected councils under the Conservatives. So you can imagine I'm not very pleased. This compares against a plus 42.9% increase for a similar district council, which is inequitable with simply not fair to our residents. This reduction, I've already taken this up with the MP and we've had some words over that. This reduction reflects a real terms loss in government funding during the 10-year period since 2015-2016 of 1.4 million, 29% before taking account of any inflationary increases. The Conservatives have no longer be in charge, but they still have a lot to answer for. Mr. Mayor, turning to the council tax. Previously, the government cuts have impacted on our ability to maintain crucial services for our residents and businesses. Therefore, regrettably, we are left with no choice but to raise council tax levels by 2.99% in 25-26, which equates to 11 pence a week. Then we go into the half a pint a bit, or it's this, that, and the other. But that seems to be the run it's been for years, which equates now to 11 pence per week for a Band E property or 7 pence a week for a Band A. I think we have to remember that most of our properties are Band A or B. And I think that actually goes through the county as well. May I now turn my attention to Gedling's response to the cuts in funding. As I stand here today, yes, like all the other councils, we have been forced to make a significant number of budget reductions. However, I am pleased to say that the quality and performance of our services has remained at high levels. And I must say, and it'll say it further down here, that without our staff, we couldn't do half of this stuff. And I've said it before, opposition have recorded their support on that we cannot do it without the loyal staff that we've got. So, however, I'm pleased to say that quality and performance of the services, and I'm repeating it, has remained at high levels. We couldn't do any of this without the excellent staff which I've just mentioned, and they continue to serve us and the people of Gedling extremely well. We are very proud of them and their commitment to this council. So let me now bring us up to date. I'm pleased to say that once again this Labour administration has proven its worth and delivered a balanced budget for 25/26. We have been prudent with our residents' pennies and looked after the taxpayers' pounds. We are ambitious for our community's future, but we only spend what we can afford. Mr. Mayor, I have to say that this has been a position extremely difficult to get into this position. Over the last 10 years, full council has approved 8 separate efficiency programmes, totalling 7.6 million, and progress in delivering these has been positive. However, with another poor financial settlement this year, coupled with increases in national insurance and other inflationary pressures, there is a need to identify more further efficiency savings amounting to the total of 109,000 as set out in the report. I will record there my thanks to all the people in Treasury, particularly Tina, spending many hours of her own at home sorting out some of these figures. Mr. Mayor, this will still leave 3.3 million of ongoing efficiencies to be found over the next few years. Yes, and that is 3.3 million. I'm always banging on, we can't spend this, we can't spend that. 3.3 million is one hell of a figure. Despite this, we have no intention of standing still. An important document for the budget is the Council's annual delivery plan. It is focused on activity that the Council must deliver during 25-26 to ensure financial sustainability, efficient service delivery and the effective mitigation of organisational and service risks. This plan identifies 44 individual projects that both support the Council's ambitious transformation plans and are achievable within the overall capacity of the Council. So let me now turn to that meaning Labour, unprecedented period as a Labour administration. Since 2011, we have protected working age households by agreeing to a 100% funded council tax reduction scheme. And I'm proud to say that Gedling is one of only a handful now of authorities who continue to offer this support. This will continue for another year, and an estimated 4,400 working age families will be protected from increased council tax pressures. In 2023, we swept to victory again through our 4th term of office, and this was based on a new set of manifesto pledges to our residents and businesses. And we have delivered on every local promise we have ever made to residents, that is within our Borough Council remit, and we always will. We remain firmly committed to economic development and will continue to offer 2 hours free car parking in our town centres. As regards our award-winning Gedling Country Park, which, may I remind you, it was voted against by the opposition Conservatives, I have listened to resident feedback, and I today am pleased to announce a price reduction from the £200 that was put up first to £85 for regular visitors to purchase an annual permit. And and again, we've listened. I likened it to my group. Similar to, if you remember the Hayward Road lobby, the big lobby over Hayward Road, and we're going to sell that off, and we're going to be told that we're going to make 750,000, something like that. And we listened and we listened. At the end of the day, we did listen to it, and we went with what people were asking. And we have here, I hope you see this as a genuine effort to actually come to some agreement there. You all go up there. I was up there yesterday looking at, there are things we need to do, and clearly under the budget, and I've just read out some of the budget things, we cannot afford to do that unless we get some income coming in from there. So that will be reinvested in the parks, into that park, and hopefully improve it for many thousands that go there. We're investing in parks, green spaces, including planting thousands of more trees across the borough, and we're investing in the refurbishment of children's play parks. And I think we all ought to be proud of that, because it's gone on for years now. And I have to name another officer there, Jane Richards, has been exceedingly helpful in securing funding for those parks. And I know that people come to the borough and say, how do you manage to afford all these? Well, a lot of it really is down to Parks Department, down to Jane, and to us putting it together. And then at the end of the day, you see all these children happily and families playing. And you can see it anytime, even in the middle of the day yesterday on the country park. There were so many people and so many children enjoying those. So we're all really proud, whether it was this organisation, whether it was a previous one. We've all worked to get those sorted. And the tree, I think there ought to be some remark about the trees. I mean, that's gone on and on and on and on, and part of the Queen's canopy and all the things like that. But is it the Woodland Trust and people like that that have helped by providing some of those trees? and the people who have turned up to plant them, of course. We are approaching completion on extension to the Hillcrest Business Park in Calverton to attract more small businesses. Looking forward to that opening, because that was a particular, I know it personal scars on that for getting the money out of D2N2, but he came here in the end, and we'll have some good quality businesses, buildings for businesses to establish themselves. We are purchasing further homes to be used as temporary accommodation to mitigate against expensive bed and breakfast accommodation. And this is an ongoing thing. I think it was you, Catherine, tonight that was telling me we got, or was it you, Jenny, that said that we got 81 applications for homelessness last month, sorry. And this is rising. And if you look, it's on the background of Rolleston Drive, of Totwig, Chase Farm, and all those places been made available. This still is coming in thick, fast and furious, and we are having to deal with that. But at the moment, I feel as though you keep pushing the tide back, but it keeps coming back at you. But anyway, we'll carry on trying to do our best for that. We're looking at decarbonation of our buildings, and you've seen that with the start here, with some of the windows being done and other things that have been done to this building. We are part of the way through a new digital transformation programme, isn't everybody? Which, with AI and everything else, and if anybody's seen AI on, WhatsApp and that to the Zelensky, president, it's quite an amusing watch on how the AI works it there, but I'll leave you to find that out, and you can press the buttons. Anyway, which will not only improve our ways of working by making better use of technology, but also, more importantly, it will deliver better services for our customers. And we have announced plans for a new Carlton Leisure Centre and Community Wellbeing Centre as part of strategic review of our community facilities. And that is if we can ever get the people who dug the hole at Richard Herod out. They seem to be digging a new hole at the moment. The crane's gone, but there's another hole up here. In terms of housing, everyone knows that getting new homes off the ground is a massive challenge, but Gedling has led the way in Nottinghamshire despite high interest rates, increased building costs, and the actual delivery of new homes in Gedling Borough remains very, very strong. And I think it's a good liaison that's been worked up planning department and developers. There's been a will there to let's grow, but let's grow sensibly. And I think a lot of that goes down to the staff that have been working for us, dealing with planning. Subject to the council approval later this evening, withdrawing the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan in favour of preparing a Gedling Local Development Plan will meet the government's new ambitious housing target in full, delivering 609 new homes every year, thereby meeting our growing demand for market and affordable housing. People won't, there was another item yet, so I'll leave my comments on that, on the NMPF. We are not just delivering conventional new homes in response to the climate emergency. We are working collaboratively with developers and key stakeholders to promote energy-efficient homes, the first commercial housing scheme in the United Kingdom where every new home fully complies with the Future Homes Standard is being built in Gedling Borough. Keep motorhomes at Gedling Green seek to produce 75 to 80% less carbon emissions than properties constructed under the current building regulations and feature air source, heat pumps, solar panels and increased levels of insulation and electric vehicle charging points. Plus they've got walls like a medieval castle when you go and look at them. They're that wide, thick rather. Mr Mayor, this year we will continue delivering for our residents. There are very difficult times ahead, but this Labour administration will always rise to the challenge, and this budget focuses on the issues that matter most to our residents and businesses. It is a budget full of ambition for the future. So therefore, Mr Mayor, I commend the budget to the Council and look forward to a constructive debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I think at this point we have an amendment from the Conservative group. I think the wording is going to be circulated, and that's for a move by Councillor Adams and Councillor Smith to second. Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're just going to wait for them to be circulated. Yeah. Probably want to go to the toilet. Shall I just ask you who wants to move it? Do you wish at this stage, Councillor Adams, to move this?
Yes, happy to move it, yep. Yeah, I'll speak now, yeah, I'll speak now. Yes, yes, happy to move this. Thank you very much, Mayor. Yep, so the council, our amendment today is to remove the following. So it's to revert to diesel rather than HVO as a fuel source. To fuel savings due to budget calculations prior to a reduction in fuel identified which is 18,000. Deletion of 4 portfolio holders of 34,000. Removal of the Deputy Mayor's special allowance, 2,100. Removal of the policy advisor allowance, which is 4,200. Removal of the contacts magazine to online only publication. That will enable us to purchase the much needed new small street sweepers that we desperately need for the areas that are still struggling with surface water flooding. And as a result of that, that would be a cost of 24,000, and with on top of that, the ability for somebody to drive that at 38,000. And finally, that would also enable the provision of 1 hour free parking at Gedling Country Park, so that those people that want to use the park just to drop in and walk their dog or whatever would not have to incur any cost. So that's the key to it. There's some changes there. That's what we believe. As I said, we've been after the street sweeper for a number of years. We think that that is incredibly important to those residents. As I said, I've still got leaves in Burton Joyce that fell in November that are still on the floor. I've seen those on the Loop Road as well. We've got a lot of issue with housing for construction sites that are dumping a lot of mud and stones on the ground, and as a result of that, that's leading to damage to motor cars as well as additional wear and tear to the road surface. And that's well known that the more mud and dirt and that sort of thing is on a road, the quicker it wears down, more holes are created quicker. So, you know, we need those road sweepers out there. We need to protect those people from that surface water flooding. And like I said, and like was rightly said earlier, with the council's sort of inevitable coming to its end within 3 years, that we feel that those changes are changes that can be made in that wind down period. And we can focus more on getting those proper services to residents. So when we get to the point where we are transferring over, this can be looked as a valid offering where it's absolutely driving services first, as well as the access of its residents, many of which in my own area, one part of my own area, in my county council patch, you know, there's some people with some very difficult circumstances and very little money around, and to have to pay to access a country park for them is very difficult. And so anything we can do to alleviate that and give access to what is an area to relax and enjoy yourself, we will do. And we feel that that is a very good way of changing around the way that some of the finances have been done in this budget to achieve that. So yeah, that's it. I don't know if you want to go away and adjourn and have a read, but we would love anybody's support in the room with that. We think it's a very positive thing that we're doing, and as I say, it takes that takes all the financial benefits to the resident. And as I say, as this council is in the process of winding down, that would be the way to do it, in our opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Smith, do you want to say anything at this stage as the seconder?
Just second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Move for an adjournment, please.
Okay. Have we got a seconder there for that? Okay, thank you. We've got plenty of... Yeah, well, I think we need to vote on that, so it's really a show of hands. Those for an adjournment? Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? So we will adjourn for 5 minutes. Would that be okay? It's 5 or 10? Right, we're going to go for 10, give you a chance to have a good chat about this. Thank you. We're all back, yes? Okay, right. Okay, we'll now debate the amendment. So would anybody like to start the debate on the amendment? Anybody? Yes, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Oh, I'll start then. Right. Just a few comments, really. Revert to diesel rather than HVO. When I got elected, and when most of us got elected, we had an air quality management order on Mansfield Road. We have just had that removed because the air quality is better. Do we really, really want to go back to diesel as a pollutant? And do we really want diesel vehicles driving up and down small streets and small roads? So I'm sorry, it's an absolute nonsense. And also, there's a piece at the bottom, based on current fuel prices, which can be volatile. Well, again, that's completely unpredictable. So there are plenty of reasons why I certainly couldn't vote for that. Just to point out, there's free car parking on Lamley Lane, and I know that a lot of people use that and walk their dogs through. So it's already been reduced to £85 for an annual permit. So again, another nonsense. Mud on the roads from construction sites, Councillor Adams says. Well, can I suggest that if there's mud on the road from construction sites, he reports it to his local councillor, who can then report it to the planning department, because there should be a condition to keep the roads clean and the wheels washed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to speak on items 7 and 8 on the amendment, which is the purchase of a new small street sweeper, resulting in an increase in the revenue budget to cover the cost of borrowing and associated running costs of £24,000, and an additional driver for the same at £38,000. Potentially supposed to be giving a saving of £62,000. I'm astonished, actually, that this is in here. One can sweep the streets until the cows come home, but if the gullers are blocked and the lines are blocked, it will make absolutely no difference whatsoever. Last year, there was a problem with some of our equipment, and we were waiting for spare parts and so on. But this year, things have been much, much better. The loop road is actually clear, so I don't accept that that's the case. My understanding is that Gedling Borough Council used to cleanse the gullers every 2 years. Nottingham County Council made the decision to extend that to 3 years, but most of the gullers now have not been cleaned for 4. If you have a vehicle parked on top of a gully, it gets missed, and then potentially some of the gullers haven't been done for up to 10 years. I had to do a freedom of information request to actually get this information. So I know that this is true. So I just think we go round and round in this circular debate. You don't sweep the leaves, so we got the gullies blocked. Well, it's time to put a stop to that. My understanding is that things have improved at county, but that last year there was only 1 or 2 of the big machines for the entire county. So I just think it's a complete waste of money, and that we ought to get the gullies clean first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Elwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Looking at the amendment, we have, in the Liberal Democrat group, we have concerns about the amendment as well. Point number 1 is referring to returning to diesel, and I think point number 2, I'm assuming, is kind of connected to that as well. The financial saving is not massive, but the environmental impact is massive. So on those grounds alone, we think that the amendment cannot be supported. And as we're aware, diesel is a much more noxious fuel than HVO. Deletion of 4 portfolio holders, well, maybe you could delete 1 or 2, but deleting 4 does seem a little bit over the top. Removal of contacts magazine to online, well, we've proposed that in the past, so we would certainly have no concerns about that item. My main concern is the last item, number 9, which is referring to providing the 1 hour free parking at Gedling Country Park. On the piece of paper, it's interestingly triple asterisked, and you do wonder whether that is perhaps an indication of maybe how unrobust that figure is in the report. I personally would have thought that the loss of income would have been greater than the 41k that's referred to in the amendments. And obviously, if that was the case, then that would unbalance next year's budget by a significant amount. So we're minded not to support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elwood. Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to sort of follow on and amplify on some of those statements from Councillor Elwood. On that first point again, reverting to diesel rather than using diesel rather than HVO is clearly a retrograde step. It won't help our carbon reduction targets, and diesel emissions of particulates are a major factor in poor air quality. Daybrook Square, which is close to the depot, has long been a hot spot for poor air quality, and reverting to diesel is not going to help. You're subject to so many more price fluctuations with oil than you are with HVO. So the figures, the projected savings they put in this amendment for fuel costs seem to me to be little more than a straw in the wind. They're a best guesstimate, which is not really what you want when putting forward a budget amendment. As Councillor Elwood said, removing 4 portfolio holders seems to me to be a little savage. There's the amount of work that the Cabinet and the portfolios have to do is still going to remain the same, regardless of how many people there are to do it. So all you are doing is piling yet more pressure on the leader of the council and whoever would be left on the in the Cabinet. So for those reasons and the reasons that Councillor Elwood has outlined, we cannot support this Conservative budget amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Robinson-Payne?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to echo what's already been said in relation to the air quality management area that was lifted on the A60 in Daybrook. Sandra and I have been out, Councillor Barnes and I have been out and spoken to the residents along that in that area a number of times, and they are absolutely relieved at the changes in the air quality. And they told us themselves that they felt that it was noticeable, even without looking at data. They could smell it, they could feel it, they knew that it had changed. And that is down to the changes that this council have made around the fuels. As Councillor Hughes has pointed out, the depot is very nearby to our ward, to Daybrook, and originally those vehicles passing through on a daily basis were diesel vehicles. They're not anymore, and that has made a huge difference. So I just can't understand why this proposal has been brought forward. If the members that brought the amendment forward went and spoke to our residents in Daybrook, they would understand what a difference these things make to people's lives. I'd also like to just point out that this year, I know that this would not affect me as the Deputy Mayor, but this year I haven't claimed the Deputy Mayor's allowance and haven't received it. I just wanted to put that on record so that nothing can be said about me as an individual, but also I would say that the Deputy Mayor does a very good job. Hopefully all Deputy Mayors do a very good job, but especially when it comes to covering things and supporting the Mayor when things have been difficult or there have been challenges. So I just want to put that on record that it's quite a short-sighted thing to put forward, but I'll leave that there.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson-Payne. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the risk of sounding like a slightly broken record from the others who have spoken, I do have some sympathy with elements of this amendment, but I'm afraid once you reach point 1, that's where you've lost me, because going back to diesel from HVO, I walk my children to school every day down Chandos Street in Netherfield, and we have a battle, and I think Councillor Adams is aware of this battle, with people who are parking inappropriately, with people who are leaving their engines idling. I'm in an ongoing, let's say, discussion with a guy who leaves his engine idling while he stands outside and smokes a cigarette. I don't know how many ways he wants to try and kill our children. The last thing we need is a diesel lorry going down there at school time on Friday and down any street in the borough. So I'm afraid I can't vote for anything that is going to take us back to diesel. But also we've got 3 asterisks here in point 1, 2 and 9, and we've got on the assumption. This is based on an assumption. This is based on an untested assumption. So we're not only making assumptions, we're making untested assumptions. That's all very well for the science lab where we're looking at new things, but in a council where we're actually running things to the penny, literally, I think, as we're going to find out later, I don't think we can actually afford to do things on assumptions. And as others have said, I think deleting 4 portfolio holders is excessive. I think we recently deleted 1, didn't we? Or he was elevated anyway and wasn't replaced. And I take Councillor Robinson's point about the Deputy Mayor special allowance. I wonder if something to consider for the future would be for the policy advisors and the Deputy Mayor to tell the council a bit more about the work that they do, because I haven't got a clue. I mean, we know that you stand in, Councillor Robinson-Payne, because we see you and you chair meetings and so on, but I've got no idea what the policy advisors do, but I'm sure, maybe they're doing good work. Yes, we do need a new street sweeper. In Colic, we brought some brooms and some spades and got a team of volunteers together, but I know you can't do that across the whole borough. The provision of 1 hour free at Gedling Country Park would be good, because I will have to buy an annual pass to do my junior park run with my boys on a Sunday morning. So 1 hour would be better, but not at the risk of giving them 20 minutes exercise on a Sunday morning, having just filled their lungs with diesel on a Friday morning.
Thank you, Councillor Whiting. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to come back on a couple of points, if I may. Councillor Hollingsworth was quite right when she mentioned that we spoke about HVO at the last budget meeting, and I think some members may remember I did quite a lot of work on looking at hydrogenated vegetable oil before we proposed the amendment. So we just have to be a bit careful here to go, oh, diesel bad, HVO good. There are still questions to be asked about HVO, particularly the particulates that can damage children as well as diesel fumes. And the jury's still out, definitely still out. At the moment, there's lots of side effects to HVO that they're not aware of. And of course, HVO has a global impact on deforestation that we also need to be aware of. And forgive me, Mr. Mayor, I can't remember the exact body that I quoted, but I believe it was the World Green Energy Transport Trust who quoted HVO as probably the worst type of fuel that you could use because of its impact on transportation all around the world and its impact on deforestation and its unknown consequences of particulates. So please just be careful not to say diesel bad, HVO good until you've understood all of the facts. And then just if I may come back to Councillor Hunt, there may be lots of parts of the borough that are very happy with the level of road sweeping and gutter clearing. I can tell her that my ward certainly isn't, constantly inundated by requests for pavements to be swept
in Limby, Papplewick, Newstead, Ravenshead and the outlying areas. Quite often, the answer we get back is, well, it's an 8-week cycle, but then that's broken down, so it's going to be 12 weeks. And, you know, we understand all of that, but at critical times in the year, it does block drains, it does cause flooding. And another one would alleviate that. And if we can ever find a way for this council to afford another road sweeper, I'm sure we would all welcome it. And let's see if we can do it before the borough is abolished. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Kyle Robinson-Payne said. I've been a councillor for Daybrook area for quite a long while, and yes, we did have an awful air pollution problem, and now it is a lot better, so we cannot go back to reverting to diesel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to turn the debate back onto the benefits of the amendment that they'll have on the residents, if I may. But first, can I just thank the work of the Chief Finance Officer for her professional advice on the amendment before I move on. There are two parts of the Conservative amendment that both hugely benefit the residents of the borough, regardless of the debate on how they're funded. First of all, the investment in a road sweep, in an additional road sweeper that you've heard from Councillor Bestwick and Councillor Adams already. All our areas, no matter what colour stripes you wear or where you represent, all our areas have trees that drop their leaves in the autumn and throughout the year, and they cause trip hazards on pavements and cover the drains and then block water going into them. And if you ask yourself why the gullies blocked and why do we need the county council to unblock them, well, if we swept the roads, we might not have that problem. And all that adds to the risk of flooding during heavy rainfall, doesn't it? So the council can mitigate it, Mr Mayor, by sweeping the roads. Pavements in Stoke Bardolph, I think, may have been mentioned already, but they haven't been swept for months. I think last year's fall's still on them, despite the constant request of the councillor, which is me, Councillor Hollingsworth, to request them, and it never gets done. So the council clearly need more road sweepers and drivers to effectively clear all the roads and pavements. So let's get one. Let's vote back this amendment and get that done. Obviously, secondly and finally, the Conservative amendment provides the finances to provide 1 hour free parking at Gedling Country Park, which is still wanted by residents despite the price drop that you've just heard today. I wonder why there's been a price drop. Is it because the amendment's gone in? Probably so. Conservatives getting something done without an amendment there. Everyone involved in creating the wonderful community space up there should be congratulated, Mr Mayor, and I offer that congratulations. It is used to provide a free day out for families right across the borough, families who may not be able to afford trips away, but would visit Gedling Country Park with friends and family for a walk or cycle around the beautiful space, or to play on that wonderful park that's up there. A free trip out, Mr Mayor. I've underlined that in my notes, free trip out. Was free, wasn't it, until Labour introduced car parking charges that cost 3.5 times more than Rushcliffe Country Parks. And what does Labour's parking charge do, Mr Mayor? It puts people off visiting the park. It would reduce footfall to the cafe. That risks jobs cuts in our borough. Are you all okay with that? It will reduce park run competitors, which will affect mental health and the health of our residents. It also clogs up neighbouring residential streets with cars parking there. But not to worry, this council doesn't pick up the bill for that, does it? No, the county council does, when residents on residential streets around there request for yellow lines to be installed. And again, leaves the taxpayer picking up the bill for a decision made in this room. I think that's unfair. And it will all add more traffic to other parks that are free to attend, places like Bestwood and Colic Country Park that already have their own parking issues, are going to get worse because residents will change their behaviour. They'll change where they go because they want to enjoy that free day out. and all that can be avoided. A free trip out for families can be protected by introducing 1 hour free. We've come up with one option of funding it, and I think we should get on with it. So in summary, the Conservatives are proposing an additional road sweeper to keep our roads and pavements clear and prevent flooding, 1 hour free parking at Gedling Country Park to offer free trips out to all residents and prevent our streets being congested. That's why, Mr Mayor, we should all back this Conservative amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Barnes, is it a point of order or are you wishing to speak again?
I just wanted to speak again on
No,
something.
you can't speak again unless it's a point of order. Thank you. Councillor Maltby.
Thank you. First of all, can I commend the Deputy Mayor on not claiming expenses. Obviously, any penny saved to the borough is a penny saved to residents. Thank you for that. Moving on, I'm not a school teacher, but I want to talk slightly a bit about nature, physics and history. Councillor Hunt mentioned about not needing a road sweeper. What we need is gullies being unblocked so the water can flow freely. Great, but unfortunately leaves fall, rain falls. They're then left on the streets, they're not being swept up. And I'm not only talking about Bestwood St Albans, where I see this as a regular problem. Bottom of Park Lane, I've unblocked the drain several times myself. Also, on Coronation Walk, where I live, one of the drains is blocked now. Which I regularly have to unblock because the roads are not being swept. They wouldn't get blocked if they were being swept. So, you know, gravity causes all this to fall, it causes the rain to come down, and if they're blocked, we get flooding. That doesn't help anyone. So that's just mentioning that point. On the last point, what I would like to say is, by not having some kind of free parking, even if it's just for an hour, people are going to park on the residential areas close to the park, which means increased fumes, which means children living there are going to be subject to pollution. If we're looking at reducing that elsewhere, we should also be looking at reducing it on residential areas close to the country park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maltby. Just to clarify that situation, once you've spoken, you can't speak twice, but you can speak if we go further forwards. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to show up the thinking behind Councillor Smith's speech. He's played everybody's heartstrings about how families will have a free day out based on 1 hour's free parking. Last time I looked, a day had a lot more than 1 hour in it. So, I mean, it just shows the muddled thinking behind their amendment. Time to vote it out.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Would anybody else like to speak at this point? No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Adams, to close.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I suppose what I just want to really come back to is a few of the points that have been made. If you remember 2009, 2010, a certain government came up with a great idea of a scrappage scheme to deal with diesel cars. It was such a great idea that they were convinced that by removing the diesel cars off the roads and by buying new diesel cars, that you would be able to reduce the amount of particulates in the air. The reality was completely different to that, and again was following, to a certain degree, a fad idea. And this is what, again, with things like HVOs, and I think Stuart's absolutely, Councillor Bestwick's absolutely spot on with this, that you can't dive from one new thing to another and believe that it's going to be the answer to all things. I mean, I take your point about the clean air monitors from Mansfield Road. I'm not convinced that's just down to our removal of our lorries from that stretch, but that's how you're making that sound, that it's like, that it's down to that. That's what Councillor Hollingsworth said. I'm sure if we replayed the tape, you'd hear that. That's exactly what you're saying, that those things are directly attributed to that action by this council. And I'm sorry, but that's just an absolute falsehood. There are many contributing factors to why the air quality has improved across Nottinghamshire. Many improved practices at factories. The fact that there's more trees being planted. There's many, many more issues as to why the improvement of the air quality has happened. and there's more electric cars on the road. There's less, so therefore there's less particulates and less pollution in the area where they're released. So there are many, many reasons. And again, tying something to one small thing, small action that a council takes, is, tantamounts to just misleading the whole debate about this. This specific point about HVOs is that it's still a very unproven tech. We still don't know how damaging it is. We know it's very interesting if you were to look at Google momentarily and you type in HVO oils and you get a translation from its AI overview that tells you how fantastic it is and how clean it is. And you know what? If you then type HVO negatives into the same Google search engine, suddenly you get the production of HVO can contribute to deforestation. The use of palm oil-based HVO in transport can contribute to ozone and particulate matter pollution. The deforestation required to produce palm oil reduces the planet's ability to absorb CO2. The transportation of HVO from Malaysia to Indonesia in Europe can have a significant environmental effect. So with every single positive side of things, you have to also very much appreciate the negatives as well. And so the sale that HVO is the answer to all things, I'm afraid, is severely lacking in reality. Just moving to the gully cleans. Councillor Hunt, what I will say is you do continue this line that the gullies need to be cleaned first and one tricks the other. The reality is the gullies wouldn't be blocked if the roads were swept. Full stop. So this whole problem you're claiming is caused by the gullies being full and the county council not cleaning them. It's completely irrelevant. If you stop the stuff from going into the gullies because it's not there, the gullies don't get blocked. It's a fact. It's a fact. You can't surround that in some sort of hidden, the county council only had one lorry, whatever you can't tie that into that factor. If those roads were being swept, the gullies wouldn't be full of stuff. It's as simple as that. There's no questioning that reality out there. So we need to stop that. And we just need to buy a flipping road sweeper. I've been like this for 10 years now. I've been doing this amendment for however long it's been, maybe not 10 years, probably it feels like 10 years. But we've been doing this amendment for a long, long time. And it's not an amendment that we're saying, let's tattoo a English oak on the side of it and put a Conservative badge on the side as it's driving round. We just want a road sweeper out there that's going to stop our residents' properties from flooding. If you don't mind, thank you very much. It would be lovely at some point if you had some concern about those residents being flooding, instead of where we are, which is, it's still not been included after all these years. I just don't get why you wouldn't include it. Are you saying that other priorities are more important properties than people being flooded, all the damage it caused their lives, all the problems it caused their lives? I don't know. I find it very disappointing we're still here after all these years. But yeah, I also do want to say that I would like to commend you as well, Deputy Mayor, on your not taking your allowance. I think that's a phenomenal move, and Councillor Maltby said it better than I could, that leaving it in the public purse is a very positive step. Maybe it shouldn't have shown up in the budget then if it wasn't coming out. That would have been quite helpful as well. We'd have understood then not to include that within our figures. But look, please vote for this amendment. Give the 1 hour free parking back to the people of Gedling Borough at their local country park, a country park arguably they paid for, a country park that the trees that are in there have been paid for them in the wider sense through their tax and other things they may contribute to, whether that be charities or whatever, whoever's actually putting those trees in place. The Trees for Climate programme, this park is theirs. It's quite a strange thing to own something and then be charged to go and spend time in it when you paid for it. It's a bit like buying a house and then renting it to yourself. So, that's a real shame that you've chosen to do that full stop. But the fact that we're trying to give some mitigation to that and an opportunity for people that just use it for occasional use, they can go out there, do a bit of dog walking. But also, like Councillor Smith says, a day we know is longer than an hour, Councillor Wilkinson. I do thank you for that incredibly clever and detailed point from you there. You've really outdone yourself. But I do think the point more is that in terms of families and in terms of spending time with your family, an hour a visit can be, effectively a drive out and can form part of your family day out. It was funny. It did make me smile. But, regardless, the point is this is important for people to be able to access their local parks. So please back that. Let's get a road sweeper as well. let's start solving some of the problems in this borough that still exist before this council gets wiped out and becomes part of a unitary authority. Let's make sure that we've got our house in order, and specifically the services of our residents in order before we give it somewhere else. And let's show those councils that we've got it right in Gedling. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Unfortunately, Councillor Pope, we've moved on.
It was a point of order.
Okay.
It's just to make a clarification that in the UK, HVO doesn't use palm oil.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Clark, now to close for the amendment.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Adams for the amendment. Obviously, you'll not expect me to agree with it. I think you've been coached by Trump, drill baby Trump. Is it drill baby drill or whatever he was shouting out the other day? I do take on board Councillor Beswick's point, because I did read that article, and I think we do, and I think environmentally, and I should be reminding Viv about it, we need to just keep a check on this fuel we're using at the moment, because there was concern expressed nationally and internationally about this particular fuel, so we do need to keep so that's a good one for that, Councillor Beswick, for raising that. But it's already been mentioned by the members for Daybrook that Daybrook was one of the worst places in the whole of the country, and it'll be interesting if we could put some measuring tubes or whatever they were, before why there's traffic jams on outside while they're doing all these works, because there's a significant amount of traffic, and I think we do need to make people wary of that. Although some people just seem to stand there revving and cursing everything in sight, although it seems to be quite orderly now, not like on Monday morning when I first came in, where we got that end blocked off and we got that end blocked off. So we were supposed to helicopter into the place, but anyway, they've got that sorted. Deletion of the portfolios, well, they've already deleted one, of which I'm covering now, so you get two for the price of one. Plus the other work that's being done at the moment by the leader, which is EMCA, and also the government review, and many other things that's dropped in there. So we're obviously disagreeing. They're quite heavy, these some of the portfolio holders, and if you ever get to that position in a new authority, you won't get to it in this, because this one will finish and new things will be brought in a new unitary authority. But if you ever get to it, you don't think you're going to get any home life, because it isn't there. I think it's been answered by our Deputy Mayor, but it depends on what circumstances that people are in. If people need that, and the amount of time, and I'm particularly pleased the amount of work that's been done this year by our Deputy Mayor, who's been here, there and everywhere, and has done an excellent job. The removal of policy advisors, I would say no, personally. We've reduced it by two. The two, Catherine's portfolio and Marge's portfolio, are exceptionally large. There is so much work that goes off in those two portfolios. So I would ask you to, we won't be voting for that, so that'll be it. The Contacts magazine, again, I would just be careful with that. We have reduced it from 3 to 2. And I suppose once we go through the transformation and things like that and people get more digital, then that could be looked at in the future, whether it be this council, whether it be a new council, whether everything's transferred over to digital. But I think at the moment that it's a feel of belonging as well, that people belong. When I get that come through my door, they say when you go there, I feel as though I belong to something. You are telling us something, and it's a point of good information. But yeah, I think it needs to be kept under review and obviously looked at, and we'll when we come out of this transformation programme, I hope we'll look at it again. The new street sweepers, I've already taken this up with the Chief Executive and asked Sarah, our new director, to have a look if there's any room or any space that we can do this. The two new ones, I understand, are working very well. But I do counter the thing on the roads, and if we swept them, it'd be okay. Well, if the roads were repaired and they're not full of stones that are being then falling into the drains, so it's not all our fault. And I do think that the roads now are in such a dire straits that wherever you go, in all the patches, and you'll all see it, and it's frustrating. I know it's a big job and there's been cutbacks and everything else, but we seriously have to do it, because I know in Jim's patch, I've come through today, or yesterday rather, near the Herod there. I mean, it's like, it is the moon surface. It's very uncomfortable. And going to a meeting of pensioners in Carlton today, their complaints were quite strong. In fact, somebody complained about our country, not the country part, the Carlton Cemetery, of which I've asked them now to look to see we've got some potholes in there. It's a bit embarrassing to have potholes in ours. They were blaming the county council. I said, no, it's not county council. I said, it's us. So hopefully that's going to be dealt with. So there's a lot to go with that. But the new street sweepers, I would like to see that. Have been exceptionally worked hard, those sweepers, and I think the staff, that, particularly in flooded areas, Woodborough, Lamley, etc., have been of great use. So if we could get another one, I'd go along with that. I will wait some report back coming from Sarah when she's reviewed her new role, which she's actually leapt into, and found corners and crannies within the depot we knew never were there. In fact, I found some posts down there that was I was looking for years ago, but we had to walk around, didn't we? And there is some serious improvements going to happen there very, very shortly. As for the 1 hour for the free car parking, it's already been mentioned, 10 hours free car parking there. We're asking for £2. And this is in a day when I think, I go lots of places and I'm quite happy to leave my vehicle there, and I think for the day, and also the alternative of the other end as well. But you have to remind you again, it's not a jibe, it's a fact. You voted, Conservatives voted in this council about, where are we now, about 13 years ago when we went to do this. They voted against it. So, we've put that provision there. We want to continue with that provision. We want to improve it. It is a first-class provision, but it will get deteriorated in time, and therefore we have to have some money in the pot to do that. So if we get some money in, it'll be transferred into there, and people will be able to enjoy it. We have given another concessions, and that is the fact that we've given passes to the people who do them there. So that hopefully, and I think the staff as well, a few of the staff in the cafe. So although it's a brave effort there with the amendment, I disagree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. At this stage, we move to a vote on the amendment as put forward by the opposition group. And as it's a budget council, this vote will need to be taken as a recorded vote. So I'll pass you over to Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be clear, this is a vote on the Conservative amendment. So for this vote, when I call your name, please state either for, against or abstain. So we'll start with Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Barnes. Councillor Beswick.
For.
Councillor Brocklebank.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Creamer.
Against.
Councillor Duncan. Councillor Elliott. Councillor David Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Roxanne Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Elwood.
Against.
Councillor Feeney. Councillor Fox.
Against.
Councillor Greensmith.
For.
Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hunt.
Against.
Mr. Mayor.
Against.
Councillor Maltby. Councillor Nyuk.
Against.
Councillor Pearson. Councillor Pickering.
For.
Councillor Catherine Pope.
Against.
Councillor Robinson Payne. Against. Councillor Scroggy.
Against.
Councillor Sam Smith.
For.
Councillor Strong.
Against.
Councillor Towsey Hinton. Councillor Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Whiting. Councillor Wilkinson.
Against.
Mr. Mayor, the vote is lost.
Amendment has lost now. We move back to the original motion. Are there any speakers on the original motion? This is where if you were speaking during the amendment, you now get an opportunity to speak again for the original motion. So are there any speakers for the original motion? Yes, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From these figures, it is abundantly clear that the council faces increasing financial pressures and that there is almost no room for manoeuvre. I suspect that most, if not all of us, in this chamber hope that a new government would find more money for local government, especially as so many of the new intake were serving councillors. Sadly, this has not been the case. If anything, we've received a worse financial settlement than we expected, dropping back to being the 5th worst affected council in the country compared with 2015. I hope our 2 MPs lobbied hard for more funding, and it's a shame that they couldn't be here to tell us how hard they battered for Gedling. We will be supporting the budget as put forward, and officers are to be commended for all their hard work in maintaining a balanced budget and relatively healthy finances, thus preventing us from going the same way as the city and other councils around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Hollingsworth first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Part of this will answer what Councillor Hughes has raised, and as the leader said, the legacy of the last 14 years does live on, from prisons to potholes, social care to schools, from homelessness to health. The list goes on. And of course we'd hope for an improved settlement, and I do know that the 2 MPs have been lobbying on our behalf. But given the long list of challenges faced by the new government, we understand why this is not possible this year. But this administration, despite all the challenges, has much to be proud of, and every manifesto pledge in the authorities' control has been delivered. We've protected the most economically vulnerable with the CTRS. We've invested in our parks and green spaces, and the leader mentioned Jane Richardson, who's played a part in that. And I'd also like to thank our volunteers and friends groups who've supported the work in the green spaces and on our parks. We've continued 2 hours of free parking in our town centres, refurbishment of our play parks, the extension of Hillcrest Business Park, which I understand we could probably fill several times over. And as part of our carbon reduction commitment, they will have solar panels on them once they're completed. We've purchased further homes to mitigate against the expensive bed and breakfast. And again, I'd like to thank our housing staff who work tirelessly day in, day out to try and find homes and move people on from bed and breakfast, which is very often not suitable for a lot of people. We've got ambitious plans for the new Carlton Centre and Wellbeing Centre. We're delivering homes despite the challenges. Gedling has led the way. The first commercial housing scheme in the UK where every home complies with a future home standard aiming to produce 75 to 80% less carbon emissions. And I repeat those, Mr. Mayor, because I think it's important that our residents know that we are ambitious despite the challenges we face, and that their council tax increase has been and will be well used. Mr. Mayor, this Labour Council is unapologetically pro-growth, and despite significant challenges over 14 years, our services have remained at high levels. And this wouldn't be possible without our outstanding staff. A skilled and committed senior leadership team led by our Chief Executive, Mike Hill. They all continue on our mission to serve people and improve lives. It is my pleasure to second the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. A couple of people, I think Councillor Whiting and then Councillor Elwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me preface by what I'm about to say on the budget by saying that, as everyone else has said this evening, I have nothing but the greatest of respect for the work that the officers do, and I think they've done an incredible job in keeping the show on the road. And he might not thank me for saying this, but the same goes for Councillor Clark, who I have a huge amount of respect for, and the work that he's done leading the council. So nothing what I'm about to say is actually laid at their door. But it's quite clear, looking through these figures, that we are being asked this evening to support another austerity budget, We were asked last year to support an austerity budget, and I believe Councillor Payne and Councillor Clark laid the blame at the door of the government since 2010, and we heard a lot about the funding position that we've been in. I remember being in a meeting, maybe prior to being elected or just after elected, where someone stood up and said, we've just got to get through the next few months or years, and then we'll get a Labour government and the taps will come on. Now, we can talk about billions of pounds in black holes as much as we like, but our residents around the borough, frankly, are not interested in fictitious or otherwise black holes and billions here and billions there. They're interested in the services that we are providing, and they are interested in the council tax bills that are going to be coming through their door. And our residents are going to be faced with a council tax bill which sees the county council increase by 4.84%, the fire increase by 5%, the police increase by 4.9%, and Gedling increased by 2.98% now, rounded up to 2.99. And lots of them will be asking what additional services they are getting for the additional money. There's no question, I don't think, that Gedling Borough Council, on the whole, delivers very high quality services, but we are being asked yet again to pay more and receive less. And this is an ongoing problem, and it's a problem that doesn't seem to be going away, despite the billions that are being found for other projects. The Local Government Association said, and I quote, "Councils of all types will continue to struggle to balance the books. Many face having to increase council tax bills to bring in desperately needed funding next year, but will still be forced to make further cuts in services." And then when you look at page 145 of our agenda pack, we've got to find £3.2 million. I mean, they're called efficiencies, but let's be honest, they're cuts. We've got to find £3.2 million in cuts over the next 4 years. I'm not actually sure what's going to be left by the time Gedling Borough Council goes. I think it was Councillor Clark who alluded to the national insurance. I think we're paying £400,000 extra in national insurance, and we were told that was going to be funded. And then when the cheque came through the door, it's £114,000. So that's £276,000 that the council has got to find just to stand still. And that is completely unacceptable from this government. And as others have said, I think it's a shame that the two MPs aren't here to give us some accountability for the decisions that have been taken by those above them. I would just like to come back to the 2023 manifesto. Fair enough, Gedling is making good progress on implementing that, but there was another election manifesto in 2023 that some of us stood on. Keir Starmer said that he was going to freeze council tax bills in 2023. So it seems like we were told one thing when they couldn't do it, and now the council is being forced by Keir Starmer to do something completely the opposite, and obviously that just adds to a long list of U-turns. If I could just briefly come to my favourite topic of conversation, which is the car park at Colwick Rec. Obviously there's no money in the budget for it this year, and I know discussions are ongoing, but I was told by Councillor Payne last year that residents in Colwick should judge him and the council on the improvements that were taken in the following 9 months. That was 12 months ago. Councillor Clark talked about a few potholes in Carlton Cemetery. You want to come and have a look at Colwick Rec car park. It is a pothole. There's not a few potholes. It is one big pothole. And as some have said, the charging in the country park will inevitably push people towards there. We're being asked tonight to vote for a budget that cuts money from our portfolio holders and officers for communities and place, lifestyle, health and well-being, life chances and vulnerability, climate change, natural habitat and sustainable growth. I was kind of speechless looking at that. These things are not inevitable. Cuts to public services and reductions in public spending are not inevitable. We can make different choices. We can tax the rich. We can abolish non-doms, which has been watered down. There are people in this country with plenty of money, and it is about time that the government took some steps to take some money away from those people and redistribute it to people right across our borough who need help and who need the services. Because I really fear for our residents over the next coming years, once we start to see these 3.2 million of cuts coming through, that services are not going to be what they could be and what our staff and we would want them to be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whiting. Councillor Elwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really just, I wanted just to ask a question concerning the budget. Councillor Clark, in his opening speech, referred to the £85 annual pass for the country park, which seems a sensible move in with regard to the previous figure was obviously a lot higher. So that seems a good move, and I think that a lot of people will appreciate that. I just wanted to seek clarification. Does that, I'm assuming it does, does that mean that in the budget documents you have income of 200,000 for the coming in concerning the country park charges? Does that figure still stand? I'm presuming it does, but I just wanted to seek clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elwood. Councillor Bestwood.
It's Bestwick, Mr.
Sorry.
Mayor. Thank you. I'm not Lord Bestwood
Apologies.
Mine's a kind of a question, so if Councillor Clark can't answer me in this forum, maybe he could answer me later. With the Labour government increasing national insurance contributions for employers from 13.8% to 15% and reducing business rate relief from 75% to 40%, businesses across the borough will inevitably suffer financially as a result. This is likely to lead to job losses and business failures in the months ahead. We mentioned Hillcrest Park before, which is very near to my business. As a small business owner, I'm speaking from experience. My question really is, have they built into their budget a contingency for the inevitable reduction in collecting business rates from local businesses? Because there will be some businesses that can't pay. There will be a lot of businesses that are going to go bust. And I suspect that if their collection rate is normally 98%, it's likely to be a lot lower than that. So really, it's just, have they built that contingency in, and if so, by how much? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. I think we've got Councillor Sam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I met with the officers to go through the budget, I did snigger to myself, actually, at the fact that we've sat here, some of us, for many, many years, listening to the Labour front bench, quite rightly, can I say, call upon the government of the day, which happened for the past 14 years to be Conservative, but call upon the government of the day to increase funding for councils. In fact, the former deputy leader was probably the biggest voice for that. And then we sit here quite rightly as well, call upon multi-year settlements to be given to councils to help them budget and invest in the services that people require. Quite rightly, I applaud you for doing so. Then you get in government. Your deputy leader becomes an MP for Gedling. And what do the Labour government do? Do they increase funding, Mr. Mayor? No. Do you know how much the Conservative government over the past 2 years increased funding on this council for 2 years in a row? 2%. What have the Labour government done? They've cut it again. And instead of being the 7th worst hit council in the country for a reduction in spending, the Labour government have promoted you. They've put you 5th, the 5th worst. So the funding allocated to this council has reduced to a worse state than it did under a Conservative government, despite having a Labour MP for the borough who has spent years, as I've just said, calling upon more of it. I wonder if his absence is because he's aware of the hypocritical position he's now in, because he's voted in Parliament for a reduction in spending rather than increasing it, as he's called for many years, quite rightly, in this room. And it's not because the money doesn't exist, as Councillor Whiting has pointed out. The money does exist. It's just been spent tens of billions of pounds on other priorities rather than increasing funding for councils. We've got tens of billions of pounds going to union paymasters, tens of billions of pounds on climate aid, tens of billions of pounds on anything else other than council services. We've then, the Labour government, not only after voting to reduce council funding, backed by our MP for Gedling, by the way, the Labour government then increased national insurance costs and taxes on employers. What's that done to the borough of Gedling? I'll tell you what it's done. It's added £277,000 worth of spending onto the budget line in front of you in the book there. 277 grand. That could have paid for the car park in Collick, Russell. It could have paid for the road sweeper about 3 or 4 times over that needs to visit Stoke Bardolph, Burton Joyce and Gedling and across the borough to sweep the roads. But no, the Labour government said you can't spend it on those local priorities, councillors. Spend it on paying the national insurance increase that we're putting on you. That's what a Labour government's done to this council. Net loss of £183,500 off the budget, thanks to removal of core spending power grants. Another Labour government decision there. Multi-year settlement. Multi-year settlement. How many times, Councillor Clark, have you and your cabinet, quite rightly, can I say, asked for a multi-year settlement? Have you got one now your lot are in charge? No? No, we haven't. Again, impacting this council. And then, Mr. Mayor, as well, I flicked through the pages quite a number of times. I can't see where extra investment is going in, thanks to your increasing council tax. That normally means you're increasing the offer of services and the spend on core services. I can't see in the agenda in front of you where that increase is being spent on. What I can see is that you're cutting the councillor community grant again by another 500 quid. So that's a £20,500 cut and a second year reduction in that pot. Now, what does that do to the communities of Gedling? It means that community groups that work and volunteer really hard to improve the lives of residents are going to be worse off. It means friendship groups are going to go without funding from councillors across this chamber. It means warm spaces might not be able to operate as well as they do now. It means village lunches that come together once a month in Burton Joyce to look after the vulnerable and lonely and give them somewhere to meet new people could potentially go without the grant that covers their cost. There is absolutely that's terrible, and we won't be back in the budget for that reason. There's nothing in this budget either, Mr. Mayor, that's focused on income generation. Where's the imagination of this council gone? How can we, if we're not going to get it, we were promised it under the Labour government that we were going to get more money for councils. That's another broken promise. I've got a blank piece of paper in front of me here. I think that's all the promises the Labour government have kept, to be honest. We were promised extra money from government. We clearly haven't got it. Let's come up with our own ideas to generate some income for the council then. And I hope over the next year, Councillor Clark, you and your team can go away and come up with some ideas, because that's what we need to do to prop ourselves up. Clearly, if the Labour government aren't coming on their imaginary white horse, probably they've flogged it to some foreign country, a bit like they are with some islands. Then we've got the council tax increase, 2.99%. Again, we're paying more for less. And the budget in front of you, as Councillor Whiting has said, in 28-29, you've got to fund £4 million worth of cuts. £4 million worth of cuts, while at the same time increasing council tax by the maximum. We Conservatives will not be voting for Labour's pay more for less budget, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to reply a little bit to that trade, it's not the fault of the MPs that they're not here. They're actually on duty and they're not here to defend themselves. So I think it really is below the belt to actually name them. I've got no problem with naming the government. The government has made that decision. Yes, we are all disappointed that we didn't get a 2-year settlement. We all are. And yes, we did say it in the past. But I think it's very disgenerous of you to actually turn around and say the government is giving us nothing, not helping local councils. They gave a very generous actual settlement to the county councils and the unitary authorities, actually lifting your core spending power. And on top of that, not getting money, you got the county council got 3.3 million extra, more than they were expecting. So just to have a complete tirade attacking one council, and yes, of course, we're disappointed, but thanks to the officers and the good work done by the cabinet here, we are going to survive, and more than survive. You've been told we're actually looking into other projects. Things are being done. Yes, we would all like to have had more
Yes, the government said that, but 14 years of austerity, as the deputy leader has already, is still living on. I can give them that one. If you make a promise without seeing the books and the 22 billion, as been said, is it here or there or not? It's real. Decisions have to be made. I don't agree with all of them. I do agree with some of them. But what I do agree with is we need to be better in the future, and the only way of being better in the future is to make sure we do things right now. So, yes, I'll be supporting this budget. We're going forward, and I think it's totally unfair to just turn around and blame the government and the MPs for not being here, which you did actually say they weren't here, and they're not here to defend themselves. So, yes, I will be supporting this. Am I happy? No, but I haven't been happy for several budgets thanks to the previous government.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Can I just remind councillors, when somebody's speaking, to show them respect and listen to them. I think it's been going very well, but just show a little bit of respect when people speaking, even if you don't agree with them vehemently. Thank you. Right, anybody else wishing to speak? Yes, Councillor Adams. Sorry, Councillor Adams. Yeah, Robinson Payne. Councillor Robinson Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just sit here and I have to say that after the mess that was left by the last government, the last Conservative government, the audacity that you members have coming here and hectoring at the leader and at the group here that have done an absolutely brilliant job along with our officers to keep the council finances and services and everything else afloat, despite all the challenges and the lack of help that this council's had from the government over the last 14 years. And I have to say, Councillor Bestwick, the comment about contingencies and have we built this in, have we built that in, I would like you to consider how many contingencies families were able to build into their mortgage payments when Liz Truss crashed the economy. Because actually we speak to residents on a regular basis in my ward and across Gedling, and their lives were turned upside down by the damage that did to this country, and in turn to the council finances due to the inflation that was created by that awful decision. And the new government, I have to say, will of course need the time to build up the finances that it needs to build up so that it can repair the damage that has been done to Gedling Borough Council, but also councils all across the country. And I have to say, Councillor Smith, that there is a lot of hot air coming from your side of the room. And I think as leader of the County Council, you need to be focusing more on fixing the shocking state of our roads and pavements. And we could eventually, as a council here at Gedling, find the funds to buy a new street sweeper. But at the moment, I have to say, the roads are not fit for that street sweeper to roll across. So I would ask you to consider that, because ultimately the roads and pavements are the responsibility, after all, of Conservative-run Nottinghamshire County Council, which has been run by the Conservatives for many years prior. And I have to also call out the £22 billion fictitious comment. I've seen the government breakdown and the paperwork that lays out the 22 billion, and actually it is very real. And I would remind members as well that we have to consider that as the country comes under increasing threat from foreign forces, and the Conservatives may not like this, but they regularly raised Ukraine as a problem and a reason why the economy was a struggle and a challenge. And in fairness, at the time, I did take on board some of that as well. But we are going to be facing in coming years a great challenge, and we've seen what's been going on. Councillor Clark, the leader, mentioned earlier about the meetings that have been happening between Trump and Zelensky, and there is a real threat against this country, and we are going to have to find the money to defend this country from foreign enemies. So we need to bear that in mind as we move forward. But I think the budget is excellent. I think the officers, I think the leadership have done a brilliant job in bringing this forward and keeping the council afloat and offering excellent services, and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson Payne. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just I think I'm going to start off by just quoting that point by Robinson Payne there, because the Councillor Whiting's got a point, because the OBR have come out and said that they can't find any grounds for that black hole existing. And arguably, Brian Cox can't find any of those black holes in the budget either. And he's not seen any in the sky recently too. The reality is that it was a made-up number in order to give you the premise to go out and cause the damage to the system, the tax system, by the excessive costs that you've now laboured on the nation. I want to refer to Councillor Whiting's other point around taxing the rich. I find that, again, a very interesting point, and I find it's always a very default, easy solution for people that have got no idea how to solve the UK's problems, is that they revert to this taxing the rich. You do know that 10% of the richest people in the UK pay 39% of income tax. I don't know if you know that. But I also don't know if you know that since Labour have got into government, we have lost 10,800 millionaires to migration in the last year, which is a 157% increase on the previous year. We've lost a high number of billionaires as well that have gone abroad. The places you can go and find, the sofas you can raid for the few coins and maybe the occasional button that you choose to find to pay for your big plans, Councillor Whiting, sadly are decreasing at an incredibly rapid rate, caused in no part to the disaster that has been launched since Labour came into power. And, you know, I've done loads of these posts about you know, what's happening at the moment and what's going to happen in the future. And it's going to be very interesting going into those previous posts and showing the comparison to what we were like at the time, the growth that we were in, the positive position the country was in, the fact that we were heading towards that. The saddest thing I read as well today, in fact, was in December 2024, is that the actual figures for jobs, vacancies, is down to 1,415,574, which is a decrease of 5.5% of the number of job postings. Now, that is an awful figure because that puts us back to pandemic levels. Now, we're in a situation where we're not in a pandemic. We haven't got this mass pressure on services, that, you know, we haven't got this big problem, this national issue that we're fighting against in our own country, and yet we find ourselves in this awful, awful position. So the country was in recovery, the country was recovering, we were seeing growth in jobs, we were seeing growth in the economy, we were seeing positive change, and yet that's been pulled right back by those terrible decisions, which have already been mentioned. I mean, the black hole is hilarious, really. I mean, if you think that they've been able to give 12-odd billion quid to other countries to deal with climate, I mean, well, there's 12 billion quid straight away. You know, they've claimed that taking money away from pensioners was a great way to fix this budget, which, I'll be honest, is the worst thing they've done, I think, which is, you know, that's quite a high bar considering the level of awful things that have been carried out. So far, the fact you go after the pensioners is just, I literally can't, I don't know how to sleep at night, I really don't. The fact that Councillor Creamer sat there and said, they're not here to defend themselves. You having a laugh? Were you here when Tom Randall was the MP? He got slated every other week, and he was here periodically, but sometimes he wasn't. You know, and he was slated all the time. So to sit there and say like there's some, you know, they can't be criticised, I mean, what? Seriously? They're MPs, you know, they put themselves in that position. They've got to be prepared to not only take the good, positive stuff when things go great, and they've got to be prepared to take things when things don't go great. And, you know, I also wonder if they're going to take a leaf out of the Deputy Mayor's book and, you know, donate all that additional money they've been getting from the County Council and the Borough Council for the meetings they've not attended. I can't remember the last time I saw them in a County Council meeting. I can't remember the last time I saw them in a Borough Council meeting. And I know the local towns fund have struggled. You know, there was raised the other week to get visitations from the MP. So, look, you know, if we are paying these people all this money to go away down to London and work for us, well, work for it. You know, earn your cash. You know, do the things that we want doing. And if you can't be here to do your job as a councillor, make sure you give that money back to the council, and the council can do something else with it. You know, or call a by-election. You know, whichever route you choose to do, you've got to give the honesty to the public. So yeah, I mean, look, it's, I don't want to go on for hours and hours about the state of the national government. I want to say that that there are problems with this budget. We feel that our amendment before, I'm not going to go on about that again, other than to say we felt like that got this budget running completely in the right direction it needs to, which is thinking about its residents wholeheartedly and trying to address some of the problems they have. And as we go into the election in May, I'm sure the people of Gedling will look at these things. You know, they'll look at the things that we're not still spending money on that we should be, when we should be thinking about those residents that are in those difficult situations that it has gone on for a number of years. And they should be thinking we're fixing those things. But, you know, I mean, as far as local government reorganisation is concerned, you know, it's going to be a change that is fundamental to this council. It is incredible that it has come under a Labour government as well. When I remember 2016, what's 2016? It was 2019, it might have been. And the campaigning was rife, save Gedling, stop Gedling from being taken away from us. And then now, you know, that same person again is in the House of Commons voting to do that very thing. I find that incredible. So maybe the Conservatives had it right back then, and changing into a unitary authority system was a better system and better value for its taxpayers. Shouldn't just vote against things because you don't believe them ideologically or they don't suit your political agenda. You should vote for things or not vote for things if you believe they're the right or wrong thing to do. Simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Roxanne Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A great man once said that the language of priorities is the religion of socialism. And what we've seen is the Labour government focusing on what they consider priorities. Everyone here, I think, wants more money for Gedling. I don't think you'd find anyone who disagrees with that. But that's not what's been focused on. The focus of this Labour government has been on social care, the deprivation in social care, the hole in the budgets that there is for care for children and older people. And adding funding to support things like special educational needs, disability support and homelessness services, things that we all would say are priorities. And if Gedling not getting as much money as we want means that more money goes towards children in care, well, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think that prioritising those in care when a whole lot of money has been cut from the social care budget already in the last 14 years, that is a priority for me. And arguing over this and slagging off the government, OK, I understand you're the Conservatives, it's your job to attack the Labour government now. I'd hope that you'd agree with me that children in social care are a priority, that special educational needs are a priority. Yeah, I can hear you chuntering in the background, I understand. But I can tell you this as well. Michael and Michelle are not taking their allowances. They are not taking money from this council. And I know that you would jump up and down and scream if they called a by-election now and we had to spend money on that by-election. We've already had to spend so much money on by-elections over the last few terms, money this council doesn't have. So I'd hope you'd understand that. But instead, you're just screaming about the Labour government and the black hole, which there is a black hole, let's face it. There wasn't not going to be a black hole no matter who was in power, because we have spent however long dealing with COVID, however long dealing with austerity, and yet the deficit has still gone up and we're still having to deal with things. And talking about taking money away from international aid, well, there's a difference between the way we use power. There's soft power and hard power, and sometimes soft power gets more done. And working to help people in other countries and using that soft power gets us more when we go to the table than if we just go in all guns blazing. We're in a hard situation, and I understand that you now decide you don't want to have any cuts to councillors' pots. Bit of a turnaround for the Conservative Party with previous budget amendments asking for cuts to that. And Gedling will manage because we've got great staff. We have to prioritise what's important to us. We have to use that language priority. And sitting there and saying, oh, it's wrong, 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 without coming up with any actual changes apart from a small amount, which is cutting people, cutting allowances, cutting a service that mainly helps elderly people while we're dealing with such issues. I just think it's daft. And I hope you'll actually agree with the fact that we are working on making Gedling a better place. And you've already had John say that he's working to try and get that additional road sweeper. That's what you wanted. He's going to work hard, and I know he is. So I hope you'll agree with our priorities and work with us to make Gedling a better place.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Is there anybody else? Yes, Councillor Maltby.
Yes, firstly, find it quite laughable that people mention quite a lot of detail about the black hole, whether it's in Calcutta, I don't know where it is, but it certainly seems to be more fictitious than fact. We all have our concerns with the last government. As a Conservative Party member, I'd certainly had misgivings during the end. But what I do remember very clearly is when I was much younger and I was in the service and we got taken into a legal war by Tony Blair, which cost this country billions and billions. Then we had Gordon Brown, who got sold off our gold reserves, costing billions, and also affected people's pensions, which costed over 100 billion. How far in history do we go back before we stop saying, well, the previous government, the previous government? At the end of the day, we have the government we have in charge now. The fact that they're giving this council less money than the previous administration speaks volumes to me. And it's not me you're letting down. It's not people behind me you're letting down. It's the people of Gedling. I don't understand which people you're actually speaking to on the doors. I was born in St Anne's, lived in Sneinton and Aspley. I'm a city person, born and bred. Moved to Gedling, 14 years ago, but still got a lot of family in this city. There's not much appetite for Labour, probably not for Conservatives as well, but there's not much appetite for Labour. What they've done recently, I've seen pit people that have actually turned against Labour, and I thought I'd never see that. And I think this chamber needs to stop all this to-ing and fro-ing and try and work together. It's nice to hear that we might get another road sweeper, but it's costing the borough more money either through the county and council tax or the borough and council tax when we're not doing the preventative measures we should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maltby. Anybody else at this stage wish to speak? No? Can I pass this back to you, John, to close?
Yeah, thank you. Have we done? Listening to all that, you think everything that happened in the last year, all the problems, but and I have to revert to it. 14 years, continuous cuts, and which has been quite frustrating. And if you look at the national debt, which was 610 billion, I think it was when Labour left power in 2010, it's now 3 trillion plus. Yeah. We didn't put that in 8 months, you did. So going back to Paul Hughes, Councillor Hughes, and I will, there was some criticism of Michael and Michelle. I'll tell you what they're doing this week. Every week they've been up, they crack a door and they're out, and they won't finish till 10 o'clock at night. It's constant things, trying to revert some of the problems that's happened through the previous administration. They are still doing their jobs as district councillors, and they're still, because you can cover that. And I don't think there's any drop. They're not being, as pointed out, they're not being paid for it. And probably at some point in the future they may relinquish those roles. I don't know, but at the moment they're concentrated on trying to get the balance in some of the books. For Paul, I say that I'm not frightened of tackling government. I've tackled him when I was chair of the police authority, and I remember tackling Hazel Blair's once in the House of Commons, and she didn't like it. Neither did the people and the hench people around her, but I was absolutely adamant that we were fighting the corner and we were being done down on our allocation for policing. We did get some, we didn't get a lot, but I'm not frightened of taking people on like that, but I am going to give the benefit of the doubt to people so that they've been 8 months now trying to unravel this. You mentioned, I think it was I forget which speaker it was now, but there was criticism and said that we've given to our, was it trade union paymasters, this, that and the other. I'm proud that we've put that money into the health service, and if you, unfortunately I'm getting to that age where you have to keep nipping back and forwards to hospital, but when you can get a CT scan on a Sunday or a Saturday late on in the evening and things like that, then you'll see the figures come out and they're published soon of the improvement to access to hospitals and to doctors, etc. So I'm proud they've done that, and people shouldn't be working for peanuts, and that's what's happened. Get people down and down and down, and we have increased it and started to do that. At the same time, when you do that, obviously minimum wages is another good one, is that it comes back in tax. Majority of that will come back in tax, and it goes back into the public purse. So, for Paul, that's I'm quite happy that, and I can assure you that I will make those representations, and I've already made those representations with our two MPs that we've got at the moment. And we're not either fortunate to have the bailing out that the city's had, and the city under the Conservatives have had something like 70 million out to balance the budgets for whatever point, but 70 million went that way. This year it's from our government, have given 23.3 million, I think it is, to balance their budgets. We haven't had a penny of that, and I'm you know, it's annoying, but I can recognise the fact that we're that they are going to eventually, they will get round to us when they sort the other things out. The money about the the cutting of down 3,000 members pot, sorry, to 1,000, and possibly maybe a new way of looking at the members pot that I can't remember whether we did it years ago, but we have a committee of cross-party committee that, and then people apply into it. So because it's quite a lot. It's around about £40,000 to administrate all that. So why not do it through a committee's purpose? It might save us some money down that line. At the county council, it used to be 10,000. It's now 3,000. So the drop's happened all over the place. The business rates. I forget who said that. Somebody said about the business rates, was it factored in? It's not factored in yet because we've got all these figures about, you know, business closing here, business closing there, everything. It's all doom and gloom. That's not true. Some of it may be, but we've got to clarify that. And then obviously our 151 officer will say, look, you've got a problem there. But we are, you know, obviously notifying government and working at that. The fire authority wasn't 5% increase. It was 3.9, I think, is it, if I remember. £5, same as this one. On the good side is they rescued the Towns Fund, which is now called the Neighbourhood Fund, or some fancy name like that, but the 20 million now has been secured. That's been secured because your MP's been working his socks off to get that, to make sure that money was not there for all 75 councils. That was Rishi Sunak going out there and saying, you can have this, you can have that, have some dollars over there, or pounds, or whatever they are. And it just didn't back up. Just didn't stack up, rather, and therefore, so that's why there's been a delay. It will now move forward, and that will make a massive difference. And that's under this government. That's 20 million coming into this council. SPF fund, we've already been given, well, not say substantial amount, but well, I understand now we've got over £1 million coming in next year, which if it follows on from the excellent work, and you will see that soon when the SPF fund is actually launched, or just saying what we've actually done with it. And you will be impressed, again, down to officers, working hard with partners, making that money go a long way. So there's another £1 million plus there. And I believe now we've got the, margin's not here, but I think it's 1 million, something like that, introducing, because we've got all the new trade waste things to bring in now. There wasn't sufficient funding in there to buy all the new vehicles, etc. But that's well on its way, but that's another. So there's money coming in, but not coming in that supports this. And I will be pressing, and I hope we'll all be pressing, that we make sure we get a 3-year settlement. But give some time. It's 8 months. It's 8 months. In that time, look what, similar to you had in your government when you had COVID going all over the place and all the things that came out of that. At the same time, we've had all this, you know, unrest. And I see today that China is now threatening America, was it with the, well, we'll have a war, whatever war, and, you know, all this silly business like that. And we've gone through all these things, the things over Ukraine, the things over... It's funny you didn't bring up in your thing how many boat people we had over today. That's normally gets rammed at us. But I think at the moment you've got to give it a little bit of patience. I'm frustrated, really frustrated, that we've not received more and we've dropped down in that league. Hopefully next year we'll get up that league and we'll move to better times. But I support our budget. It's been seconded, and I think we should move the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Yes, at this point we'll move to a vote. This will be a recorded vote, so I'll pass you over to Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is a vote on the main budget. So for this vote, when I call your name, please state either for, against or abstain. Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Allen. Councillor Barnes.
For.
Councillor Bestwick.
Against.
Councillor Brocklebank.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Creamer.
For.
Councillor Duncan. Councillor Elliott. Councillor David Ellis.
For.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
For.
Councillor Roxanne Ellis.
For.
Councillor Elwood.
For.
Councillor Feeney. Councillor Fox.
For.
Councillor Greensmith.
Against.
Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hunt.
For.
Mr. Mayor.
For.
Councillor Maltby. Councillor Nyuk.
For.
Councillor Pearson. Councillor Pickering.
Against.
Councillor Pope.
For.
Councillor Robinson Payne.
For.
Councillor Scroggy.
For.
Councillor Sam Smith.
Against.
Councillor Strong.
For.
Councillor Towsey Hinton. Councillor Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Whiting. Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Mr. Mayor, that vote is carried.
National Planning Policy Framework for local preparation and approval of revised local development scheme. The recommendations for this are on page 271. Councillor Hollingsworth to move and Councillor Clark to second, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those who are around in 2019, they will remember that on the 10th of January, members were asked to note the intention to commence a review of the local plan and to commence with a review of the aligned core strategy, which had been adopted in September 2014. Subsequent reports to Cabinet sought approval to consult on the growth options, the preferred approach and the publication draft document. Gedling Borough Council has been preparing the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan in conjunction with Broxtowe Borough Council, Nottingham City and Rushcliffe Borough Council. Several consultation exercises have been undertaken on the growth options document in July 2020 and February 2021, the preferred approach in January, February 2023 and the autumn of 2023, and the full publication draft document plan in November, December 2024. Preparation of the plan took place in the context of the National Planning Policy Framework, which sets out the government's planning policies for England and how these are expected to be applied. Following the election of a new government in July 2024, a draft revised NPPF was consulted on in 24 and comments were submitted in advance of the deadline of September 2024. The consultation proposed a wide range of changes with the aim of ensuring that the planning system delivers sustained economic growth. Among these changes were making the standard method mandatory in order to deliver the government's commitment to build 1.5 million homes over the life of this Parliament. In relation to plan making, draft transitional arrangements allowed for local plans that were published within 1 month of the publication of the new NPPF, and where the emerging annual requirement was 200 dwellings or fewer below the published relevant local housing need, they could be examined under the 2023 NPPF. The publication draft of the NPPF was published on the 12th of December, which confirmed the changes to support the government's objective to significantly boost the supply of homes through the plan-led system. However, other changes included revisions to the transitional arrangements, which mean that the approach taken by the draft Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan no longer applies. In order to proceed, a further Regulation 19 consultation needs to be undertaken to reflect a housing target of 80% of the new standard method of need. Gedling Borough is the only one of the 4 Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan authorities which needs to allocate non-strategic site to meet its full housing need. Mr Mayor, councils are vulnerable to speculative planning applications if they don't have a 5-year land supply. And by progressing the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan, it would result in a 5-year land supply for the year of adoption only, and then not until the review of the Part 2 local plan, which wouldn't be adopted until late 2029, early 30. Given the confirmation of the revised NPPF and the changes to the transitional arrangement, the Council now has the opportunity to review its approach to plan preparation and produce a single local plan which meets the standard method in full, that is 609 dwellings per annum. And while the plan preparation would need to recommence, only one plan would need to be prepared, which would identify both strategic and non-strategic site to meet the Council's housing need in full and identify the full suite of sites more quickly. The plan would need to be submitted for examination by the 12th of December 2026, with adoption anticipated by late 2027. The advanced stage of the GNSP provides a good starting point for the new local plan, and the additional work would be required in any event through a review of the Part 2 local plan. A collaborative approach with the Greater Nottingham Planning Partnership will continue through its attendance at the Joint Advisory Planning Board meetings and its use of shared evidence base in agreement with the partnership, as well as the consistent policies that have been agreed through the preparation of the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan. I am therefore asking Council to note the summary of changes to the NPPF arising from the publication of the revised NPPF at Appendix 1. Approve the withdrawal from the preparation of the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan and commence the preparation of the Gedling Local Development Plan, which will cover strategic and non-strategic matters, and approve the revised local development scheme as at Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Before I move on to people who wish to speak, Councillor Clark, do you wish to second this?
Yeah, second and formally reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I was voted against the Greater Nottinghamshire Strategic Plan because it included Greenbelt development, I think it's important to spell out for the residents of Gedling what the impact of withdrawing from it is. And that impact is that it will actually result in more sites coming forward for development within the borough and probably on Greenbelt or whatever it's going to be reclassified as land across the borough. The Labour government's updated NPPF actually involves a 45% increase on the housing target for Gedling Borough. I think that's a target of 690 houses a year. An increase in housing brings with it more Greenbelt development, as I've said. That comes with its own issues, doesn't it? Because Greenbelt is green for a reason. It absorbs water. If you build on it, you potentially increase the risk of flooding in the borough. An increase of 45% on housing will also result in more congestion on our roads and additional stretch of local services, schools, doctors, and all other things that we all rely on. just to be clear, that's the impact the Labour government housing policies are having on Gedling. And we should, instead of rolling over and just saying, yes, Minister, 3 bags full, Minister, we should be standing up for our residents. We should be making our voices heard loudly and clearly that we will not bulldoze and concrete across the Greenbelt just to deliver a target. We will and increase flooding on our residents. No, we won't do that, government. We will stand up for our residents. We will stand up for local services. We don't want to put additional pressure on them by overflowing schools and GP surgeries, etc. We want to make sure that the houses we build in the borough are on appropriate brownfield sites where possible. So we won't be voting for this housing increase, because that's what it is. Lots of nice words, lots of pages and appendixes to read through there. But the short reality is the Labour government are telling this council to increase its housing building by 45%, concrete over the Greenbelt, and increase flooding and make services worse off across Gedling. We, the Conservatives, say absolutely not.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Bestwick.
Sorry, I wouldn't realise it was me next. I wonder how many of you have read and fully understand the changes to the National Planning Policy Framework. Not many hands have gone up. If you haven't, you cannot in good conscience vote for proposals 2 or 3, because you cannot be fully aware of the implications. I'll come back to that. So after years of spending building up the plan for the Greater Nottingham strategic plan, at the last minute we've pulled out. And as Councillor Smith said, we've pulled out so we can deliver 45% more homes across the Greenbelt of Gedling. We shouldn't be surprised. After all, it was Angela Rayner who promised to concrete over Greenbelt, wasn't it, if you all remember that? Now, I know what you're all thinking. You're all thinking, well, that doesn't really affect me. My ward hasn't got any Greenbelt in it. I'm all right. But remember, we're here to represent all of the residents of Gedling. And I think Councillor Clark earlier said, we will deal with the matters that matter most to the residents of Gedling. Well, I think this matters a lot to the residents of Gedling. And consider this. I'm coming back to the MPPF. If you haven't read it, if you haven't looked at all the changes, and I admit it's a long document, I've read most of it, I've not read all of it. But if you haven't, you won't realise that it's a charter to concrete over the Greenbelt. That is basically what it is. And if you haven't read it, you don't know what is going to happen to all those other green spaces in Gedling. Councillor Wheeler, have you read it? If you haven't, how do you know that the Hobbocks is not going to be concreted over? There are lots of other green spaces that we rely on in this borough. We rely on it for our mental health, for children to play, to walk the dog. And if you've not read the MPPF, you don't know what's going to happen to those green spaces. So it's even more important if you consider that in 2 or 3 years' time, this borough is likely to be abolished. So if we've still got these targets in place when this borough is abolished, and we could become part of the city, do you think some councillor in Lenton is going to care what happens to the Hobbocks? No, they're not. Now, I've no doubt that we'll be told, after I've given this riveting speech, which I can tell you're all listening to, that we'll be told we've got nothing to fear and everything's going to be fine and we won't be building on green spaces, etc., etc. But it was only a few months ago that we were told, oh, we've got to pass the permission to join the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan in this meeting, else we'll be open to speculators. So let's not rush this. Let's ask your leadership for time to read the changes and to be fully briefed. Then they can bring it before us again in this chamber for the residents to see and hear us debate in a normal manner, rather than putting it at the end of a budget meeting, which you wouldn't normally do anyway, in an attempt to rush it through. We've heard we've got until December, so why not put it back 28 days Give us a chance to read it and digest it, and then we can debate it, where the residents can listen to us. Because if we pass this today, and you allow, without scrutiny, you give the council permission to build 690 houses a year in this borough, if you do not push this back by at least 28 days, I promise you that you'll wake up in the morning, one day in the future, you'll look at yourself in the mirror and you'll say, I could have stopped that. I could have stopped that and I didn't. And then we'll all have to answer to the residents of the people around Hobbocks and all the other green spaces that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason we put a plan together is so that we can organise where we build, the green belt, the urban areas, the rural areas, and now the grey areas, which I admit I'm not sure exactly how they're defining that. But you're putting a completely one-sided argument of one thing. 80% of the residents, roughly, probably gone down a little bit now, live in the urban area of Gedling. And you are really suggesting urban cramming. Just protecting the green belt willy-nilly means that you are actually putting forward urban cramming to areas that are already well built on, have their own problems with social cohesion because they're actually overbuilt on. And this is why we have planning. We're coming out of the Greater Nottingham one because of a timetable, not of our doing, but to make sure that we actually do put a plan together. Some urban, some rural, some green, some grey, some brown belt. That's the whole idea of the plan. And if we don't actually get on with it, we will be in the same position that Rushcliffe was in several years ago, where the speculators and the contractors, the rest, they are not slow off the mark. And they love greenbelt land. Absolutely love it because they can sell their houses at a bigger profit there. If we mistime this and actually don't put our plan together, the speculators will be in minutes later, not hours and days, minutes later, and the very green belt you're trying to protect will be being built on because it's good value for them. By actually supporting this, we are actually supporting putting a plan together. Bits of it I like, bits of it I won't, and the same goes for you. Nobody's perfect, no plan is perfect. But the whole idea of working together, which one of your members said earlier on, is to work together and get better results. To actually gamble with the residents by not coming out of the Greater Nottingham one and putting a plan together that can be accepted by our residents, both rural and urban, I think is a massive mistake. And please, stop using the one-sided argument. The planning and building of houses is for our kids, your kids, grandkids, and the rest of it. Are you suggesting urban cramming is the answer? Because it's not.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Whiting, and then Councillor Elwood.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I can see kind of both sides of the argument here, but I just had some specific questions for Councillor Hollingsworth, if I may. And if she can't answer now, perhaps she could answer later. I note that obviously we have withdrawn from the GNSP. Could Councillor Hollingsworth please tell us if there were any conversations with the other local authorities prior to our withdrawal, and the date on which they were notified of withdrawal, and who actually took the decision to withdraw us from the GNSP? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whiting. Councillor Elwood, and then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This does seem a rather strange proposal in the sense that ever since I've been on this council, the planning policy has always been to have a regional, semi-regional aspect to planning, a land course strategy, whatever it's now changed its name to the Greater Nottingham Planning Strategy. It just seems a bit retrograde to lose that. And I must admit, I do have some sympathy with Councillor Bestwick's point about why do we need to decide this tonight when there is still some time to decide it. I would have thought with a bit of goodwill on the part of this council and the other councils within the Greater Nottingham Partnership, that the aims of the government, which are to increase housing, which is a reasonable proposal to put forward, those could still be met within the confines of the GNSP. So it does seem a bit odd just going back to having a local plan for Gedling on its own, and we're talking about councils being reorganised in the next couple of years to a more bigger councils, unitary councils. So again, it just feels odd going to a smaller area when as councils we're moving to bigger areas with possibly unitary councils and bigger councils. So it does feel a bit strange. Reading the document, I'm a little bit unclear what, if we carried on with the GNSP, what would be the, and we didn't meet the 609 dwellings per annum this year or whenever it is. What is the penalty? Will we have a penalty on the council, or is the issue to do with developers being able to put forward applications willy-nilly on Greenbelt, the Rushcliffe argument that we know of, that was previously an issue in Rushcliffe. So I'm just a bit unclear, if we didn't go with this amendment, what would the consequences be? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elwood. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to come back on Mr. Bestwick's comment about the Hobbocks. Have you actually ever been up the Hobbocks? Do you know where the Hobbocks is? Okay, right. Well, can I just say, I actually work with the Friends of the Hobbocks group, have done for many, many years. I've lived in Arnold for well over 30-odd years. I know that area like the back of my hand. And I can tell you now, if it wasn't for a Labour administration, there wouldn't be a nature reserve there now. We designated part of the Hobbocks, a designated local nature reserve in 2015. Okay, the nature reserve is not being built on, not on my dead body. All right, okay, it's not going to happen. I understand there are lots of sensitivities around development in and around that area. I'm well aware of that, and I think most residents.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Anybody else wish to speak at this point before John comes in? Right, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. It's just a very quick point. We've been doing some traffic work along the A612 while we're developing in my county role along the A612, looking at traffic numbers. And over the past year, traffic's gone up 12.5% along the A612. 12.5%. One of the key things that's changed in our area has been high volume development of new properties in that area. So and as a result of that, we're getting a lot of issues with traffic, we get a lot of issues with noise, we get quite a lot of antisocial drivers with silly exhausts that they should know better with, driving around as well. And the truth of the matter is that if the more you build, the more traffic you create, if you're not creating the infrastructure to back that build up, then you are creating more and more problems. And in fact, I had somebody that was talking about moving to Gedling, the Gedling part of my division. I was speaking to you today. And they actually rang me up specifically to say, is the traffic always that bad on Collet Loop Road? Because I don't know if I want to move there if it is. And this was into a vacant house. Already a number of years old, sort of Victorian period, I believe. So there is already big problems on the road networks caused by increasing the building of properties, the volume of properties. We're going to get another 45%, like we've talked about, is the target. I know we had targets before. I think we very rarely hit a target, and I think we did get penalised by government and lost money. I'm sure that started a process where we did keep losing money as well as a result of not hitting these targets. So I'm slightly concerned that we're putting ourselves back into this zone again, where we will be in that and start losing cash as a result of not meeting housing targets. But fundamentally, again, what I don't get is why we aren't prepared to think about this a little longer and give everybody in the room a chance to really understand it. I mean, maybe I'm not, I'm doing everybody a disservice, and they've all read the NPPF cover to cover in its newest format. I'm sure many of you have spent many hours midnight reading the NPPF line by line. But when it's a big decision like this that affects the whole of our borough, I think you should do, to be honest, and I think you should give yourself a chance to. So the fact that I completely agree with what Councillor Bestwick said, and I absolutely think we should be doing that. We can't support something that, we've already got a plan in place. We've already got an area plan. I think what was said over there was a good point, and that we've got an area and a shared view of planning at the moment across all boroughs in Nottinghamshire, which works. Oh yeah, and during the time where we were in power, we removed housing targets, which prevented councils getting these fines for not achieving that. And one of the most proud things we did, one of the things that myself and I know Councillor Smith feels about, was in Stoke Bardolph, where we could have had an additional 800 houses, which would have turned Stoke Bardolph village no longer into a village; it would have turned it into a small town, and that effect, I don't think what is always realised or appreciated by people that aren't in villages, but villages have a certain thing about them. They are a thing on their own. They are quite a unique space. I've never lived in one before until I moved to the village I live in. And they're a great place, and they do create an incredible community environment where people genuinely do, in times of difficulty, pull together. And the more sprawl we get going out towards these villages, and the less these things exist, it's a damage. It's damaging to the way that socially our areas work, and that's a big loss. That's a real loss to our culture, because they're important, our villages. And funnily enough, a lot of people that live in the suburbs come out to the villages and have a walk by the river, or go and buy a coffee or whatever, go up in the hills and look at the gorgeous views that no doubt will disappear as a result of the planning of our future growth as a borough. So, I just want to say a word to protect the villages, really. I represent a number of them across my patch, and the opportunity for them and for everybody that's in the urban areas to come out and have a walk. And I actually think in these urban areas, yes, we do need to increase the volume of properties within urban areas. Absolutely, we do. Absolutely, we do. Urban intensification is seen as a very positive move in terms of development. Many reasons: security, increasing the volume of people into towns so that you can get more businesses running, so towns become viable, and these bring jobs to the area. All these things, as you intensify housing and you intensify the numbers of people in towns, you enable that to happen. So, in places, in terms of villages, you do have small, but you have more piecemeal development, which means that the village can adapt steadily, and therefore, but you still get those people running the shops who live in the villages, that then those people from outside within the urban areas can come and visit or whatever. So I just think that more time's needed. I think more opportunity for people to study this would be a positive thing. Like we said, we've not got a deadline on Wednesday, so give it some time. As a group, like I say, we can't back it in its current format because we don't agree with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I talked too long on it. We've taken advice, and we've got one of the best planning teams in the country. We've taken that advice, we've looked at it, and we've decided to move forward with this. And we need to do it now because the fact is And I go back to the times I've said it in this chamber, 80% of us live on 20% of the land. And the people in the area, certainly my county division of Woodthorpe, Portchester, Daybrook and Phoenix, have had enough of being urban crammed. And, you know, so therefore something's got to give. And I can understand, Councillor Adams, where you're coming from as well, because, you know, I've tried to protect villages, but I'm afraid the progress of time now is going to move on. And I think we should move on. We should get this going, because if we don't, we'll give the developers the freedom to roam and the freedom to arrive, and we'll have no law there. We won't be able to stop it. So I think we should go with this tonight, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Robinson-Payne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to say that I do agree with Councillor Adams about antisocial drivers. I think that has been a problem in recent times, and road safety is important to all of us in this chamber, as you can imagine. But I would point out that, you know, when we look at some of the planning applications that come forward over time, that Nottingham County Council highways regularly usually approve or agree to schemes without putting up more of a robust argument around highways and the issues around that subject. So I think that does need more work, and I think you as a county councillor, and obviously we're in a privileged position that we've got Councillor Sam Smith as leader of Nottinghamshire County Council. Please do take that back to your teams in County Hall, because I think we could make a real difference. But I would just point out that, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but this country, again, a legacy of the last government, has a housing crisis. And we've got families that need housing, they need homes. Granted, we need more social housing. That's something that regularly I get asked as a councillor. But what do we hear every time from the members, some of the members opposite? You know, not in my backyard. Well, where are these houses going to go? We need to. We've had a good comment made by Councillor Jim Creamer about speculative development. We need a plan to make sure that we're protecting some of the greenbelt areas, but also we can look to the grey belt. I also think some of this gives us an opportunity to look at looking at our town centres where perhaps the footfall isn't as good anymore, and that we could try and improve town centre living, which is something that some council areas have done, councils and local authorities have done very well at, and I think it's something perhaps Arnold could benefit from in the future. So I just think there's a real opportunity here, and I know that Councillor Hollingsworth has worked extremely hard on the proposals that have been put forward, and that's why I'll be supporting the motion that's been put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson-Payne. Anybody else at this point? No? Do you want to bring the discussion to a close, Councillor Hollingsworth?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just going to start by addressing the point that Councillor Whiting raised about consultations with other council. As you know, we are a member of the Joint Planning Advisory Board, and I think we've made a considerable contribution to the work that it does. Yes, clearly conversations took place. The timing of the confirmation of the MPPF was unfortunate because it was just before Christmas. And obviously we could not have anticipated the changes to the transitional arrangements. It wasn't a decision that was taken easily or lightly. It followed lengthy conversations with officers and taking their sound advice with the leader and myself. But we were conscious that other authorities needed to have notice of our intention to bring this to council tonight, because a Regulation 19 consultation was required, and I think the deadline is March the 25th. March the 25th. So it was only fair and reasonable to give them notice so they could actually prepare to take Gedling out of that plan so that they could get their Regulation 19 consultation done with, so they could proceed. I hope that answers the question. Thank you very much. In terms of Councillor Elwood, yes, we are subject to housing delivery tests, and I don't think that's been removed, has it? So we have to achieve a percentage, and we do get penalised if we drop a long way below that. And yes, if we can't show a 5-year land supply, we could be open to speculative applications, which would be quite hard to resist because there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development. Does that answer your question? Thank you. So, I'll repeat again. Without a local plan, the council has less control over where new housing is built. This makes it easier for developers to submit speculative planning applications, including on Greenbelt. By voting against the preparation of a Gedling local development plan, the Conservative group put at risk the very Greenbelt they purport to protect. Councils without an up-to-date plan or a 5-year land supply may struggle to refuse developments even in sensitive Greenbelt land. A local plan allows for strategic infrastructure, planning such as roads, schools and health services. Without it, new housing could be approved without proper infrastructure, putting more pressure on communities. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody said we should be struggling and fighting against the housing need numbers that we've been given. Well, I'll just tell you that if you don't put a local plan in place, you could be subject to government intervention. They will move in, develop the plan, and you may not even get a chance to be consulted and have a say. So I just want to remind the Conservative group that last July, the Labour government was elected with a stonking majority on a commitment to deliver 1.5 million homes, and it was at the front and centre of the Labour manifesto. That's because after 14 years of utter failure under the Conservative government, there are now 1.5 million people plus on housing waiting lists, 160,000 children without a permanent home, more than 123,000 families in temporary accommodation, and some have been in temporary accommodations for 5 years or more. The deaths of at least 74 infants have been linked to temporary accommodation. 5 million people are living in unsuitable housing because of disrepair, overcrowding, damp and mould and unaffordability. An average of 12,000 social homes have been lost every year through Right to Buy because the 2012 pledge by David Cameron of one sold, one built never materialised. 4 in 10 social homes sold through Right to Buy are now owned by private landlords, still available to rent, but out of reach for so many. And let's not forget, Mr. Mayor, the 8 Secretaries of State for local government and the 16 housing ministers in 14 years. The average tenure of a Tory housing minister was just over 8 months. So I'm sure you'll be happy to explain to the 729 people on Gedling Housing's waiting list and the 41 households in temporary accommodation why they shouldn't look forward to a permanent secure home in Gedling. Not to mention the 152 outstanding homeless applications, including 82 received in the last month. Mr. Mayor, we cannot and we must not condemn future generations in Gedling or elsewhere to more of the same. Will the next few years be challenging? Undoubtedly they will. But Gedling has a good record of housing delivery through our adopted aligned core strategy and our Part 2 local plan. As the local plan is developed, there will be consultation opportunities where elected members and Gedling residents can have their say. The cross-party working group will continue for those who wish to attend, so that members of other groups can ask questions and make comments. Government has made clear that it expects local plans to progress during the local government reorganisation. The Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has said that she expects all local authorities to play their part. Mr. Mayor, that is exactly what Gedling Borough will continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Right, at this point we will go to a vote on this item. Yeah, this will be a regular normal vote.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Are we voting on all 3 or one at a time?
No, it's all 3.
Yeah, I think it's been taken as a collective. Okay. So, those for this item, hands up, please. Those against? And abstentions? Okay. Thank you for everybody's vote there. That's now carried. Okay, before we go on to item 6, I just briefly want to say our thoughts and our prayers go with Councillor Lorraine Brown at this very difficult moment in time. Obviously, this item, we'll discuss that, but I'm sure we all feel that our prayers and thoughts are with her family at this very, very difficult time. Thank you. Right, item 6, non-attendance by a councillor for 6 months. The recommendations are on page 291. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Adams to second, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Don't really want to do this, but we have to. So I'll formally move now the recommendation that's laid out before us.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yes, formally second, Mayor, and just really to say that we wish her all the best and wish her a swift recovery. I know she takes still an avid interest in what's going on here, as she did when she was a councillor, obviously sitting actually in the chamber. So, yeah, so really appreciate the council's support with this and, yeah, wish her a very, very speedy recovery.
Okay. I don't know if anybody wishes to add to that at this point. No. Okay. Then we do you want to close? Do you want to close on this one? Or should we just go straight to a vote?
No, just go straight to the vote.
Okay. Thank you. Right. For those in favour of this item, please raise your hands. Yep. Thank you. For those against? And any abstentions? No. Thank you. That's therefore carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Can I thank everybody for this evening, for attending, and thank you for the debate across all the different items. Thank you. It's much appreciated. Have a good night and have a pleasant trip home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members of the council and members of the public, please be upstanding for the worshipful, the Mayor of Gedling.